Hello and welcome. In this lecture we're going to be looking at how these three dots down there are going to be spawned dynamically in code and how we're going to add them in to the horizontal box. Now this is going to be largely a revision lecture, so you can whip through it really quickly to get to the next lecture, which will tell you more about how these slots can actually be padded out from C++ code, how we can change properties of the container slot, the container slot that we see in WBP, this thing here. Let me show you. If I click on an item inside a container, you can see that it's got this slot properties which actually belong to the container that it's in. So how do we edit those? That will be the subject of the next lecture, so let's whiz through this lecture to get there. Okay, so we're still on the spawning stage of our plan, where we are trying to get these widgets, these dots, to appear dynamically. So what is the next step of this? It is to actually be able to add them. Now, how are we going to do that? I'm going to expose a method on which one? The UI, painting picker, and where do you think I would expose a method for adding to the UI? I'm going to put it on the grid card because this is the thing that we are adding the pagination dots to. So let's do that as a public method. It's going to be void add pagination dot. And I'm going to think ahead just a little bit to thinking whether when we're adding it, is it going to be active or deactivated. So I'm going to have a Boolean in here called active as well. So that's just thinking slightly ahead. Don't worry if you wouldn't have come up with that yourself. Let's go ahead and copy that over to the C++ where we're going to be implementing it. That's the API for adding the pagination dot. Now what we're going to do is we're going to temporarily be calling it in the begin play of the painting picker. So if we go to that begin play and just above where we've got, what do we need access to? We need access to our painting grid. Sorry, I've done it in the painting grid card, haven't I? Yes, that's wrong. I want it obviously in the painting grid, not the painting grid card. But there we go. We can just copy it across. So we've got add painting. We can add a pagination dot. We've got clear paintings as well. And let's copy over the C++ into the grid card 2. So I'm going to have to change the class here. Okay. So we go to the painting picker. And we're looking for the painting grid. So I'm going to do this in refresh slots for the time being. And before we clear the paintings, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do a painting grid widget, arrow, add pagination dot. And at the moment, I'm just going to put false for all of these and add 3 of them. Just so temporarily we've got the same thing going on as we've got going on in the blueprint. Now I expect this to be able to compile, so let's get on with a challenge definition for you. You're going to implement spawning of this dot. You should know how to do this by now, what moving components you need. So you're going to remove all the widgets from the blueprint. In fact, I'm going to do that right now with you just to show you how I want it to be. Let's remove these widgets entirely. Boom. So there's only this horizontal box. Now, once you've done that, 3 should be added automatically because of that code that we've temporarily put in the painting picker. Then there should be children, they should be made children of the horizontal box, so they look like what we already had there. They should also spawn the blueprint child, not just the C++, but you should be able to communicate with the C++ interface. And padding shouldn't be right just yet. We're going to figure out padding in the next lecture because you need to know something you don't quite know yet. So let's go ahead and have a go at this challenge. Okay, welcome back. So let's do the first things first, which is to hook up our horizontal box so that we can add to it. So let's go to our painting grid this time, get it right. And it's going to be in the private, or is it going to be, for our binding, we do it in protected, don't we? So we do it protected, property. It's going to be a horizontal box, so I need to include the right thing. I'm going to hash include the components / horizontal box. So the type of this uProperty will be the uHorizontal box, asterisk, And we're going to call this one the Pagination Dots, because that's the container for them. Okay, so we've got Pagination Dots, and what else do we need here? We need some configuration of the class that we're going to be spawning, just like we've got a grid card configuration here. In fact, I can copy most of this to have the configuration of the blueprint that we're wanting to spawn. And for that, we're also going to need to include #include the Pagination Dot .h. So it's going to be a T subclass of the U Pagination Dot, and actually it's going to be an A Pagination Dot, no, a U Pagination Dot, because it is a widget, and it is a Pagination Dot class that we're going to try and spawn. Okay, with me so far? Let's go ahead, and this is going to reset some things in the editor, so I'm going to close the editor down before I compile these header changes. And we're going to go over to our implementation of add pagination dot, where we are going to, first of all, spawn the dot. So it's going to be a create widget we're going to call to. In fact, you can see where we've done this before. If you want inspiration, that's how we do it. It's going to be create widget of type U pagination dot, and specifically the owning game instance or whatever, it's going to be get world, I think. Is that how we did it before? Yep. Then we give it the class, so it's going to be the pagination.class. And this is going to return our widget. So we're going to just call this the dot, and I'm going to use auto because I don't want to write the type out twice. So auto dot equals create pagination dot. So we then need to check that it actually got created. So if not dot, I'm going to return early from this method. Then what? We've got ourselves a dot. We want to add it to the horizontal box, which was called pagination dots. So pagination dots, arrow, add child, like so. And then we can just add in a dot as a child of the pagination dots horizontal box. And one extra check we should do here is that the pagination dots itself is not null. So I'm going to do an if statement right at the beginning, saying that if not pagination dots, then we're going to return early, because we can't add anything if we don't have a horizontal box to put things into. So that's just help us avoid some crashing. So we should build this again and then open up the editor. So my build has succeeded. I'm going to go up and launch the editor again, and we'll need to configure this so that our horizontal box will correctly bind. So the pagination dots is the name of the horizontal box, and we're going to need the pagination dot class to be set up to our WBP pagination dot class. So let's go ahead and open up our WBP painting grid. And in here, we'll see that there is a compile error because it can't find the pagination dots. So we'll rename our horizontal box to pagination dots, like so. Simple. Go over to our graph, class settings, no, class defaults, and we can change the pagination dot class over to the WBP pagination dot. There's not many options there. Compile this, and now we should see that at the moment we can't see any dots, but if I go ahead and hit play and bring the stuff into view, you can see that there are 3 dots. Obviously the padding is not right at the moment, and their activity is not right. They're all active, but we're going to fix that in upcoming lectures. In the next lecture, we're going to figure out particularly how to deal with padding and things that are properties of the container, but of the slot in the container, and we're going to find out how to do that all in C++. So join me quickly for that lecture.